All right, hopefully everyone is doing well out there. We are going to do a little bit of a deep dive into the Utah Jazz offseason. About an 8 or 9 minute video. You can find the written portion on ESPN.com. We've got the offseason documents out for the 10 teams not in the play-in. And then we will add the losers, the 4 losers in the play-in tournament. We'll get added to that, and then we'll add the first round losers, and basically by the end of, I guess, middle of June, we'll have maybe Boston or Denver or Philadelphia sitting up top here. But you can go on ESPN.com and you can kind of read all about it, but we're going to do a little bit of a video just kind of explaining. As you can see, my whiteboard behind me has all their resources to build, and we're going to talk about that as far as some of the big picture things to look at in the offseason. I would say it's amazing. A year ago, after they lost to Dallas in the first round, you were faced with the decision, like, you had no draft assets. You had basically traded out everything. You were a tax team. You had just gotten eliminated by the Mavericks in the first round. And then prior to that, certainly the Clippers series was a ultimate disaster. How does this roster get better without trading Donovan, Bojan, Rudy, Mike? How does it get better if you don't shake it up here? And they certainly shook it up. It's almost kind of like what Miami's kind of going through a little bit right now, as far as with the Heat, and we'll talk about them if their season ends later in a week with their article and in a video here. But as we're not going to go into kind of the past. They basically ripped the Band-Aid off, and they didn't bottom out. They didn't go to 18 wins and 19 wins. They were a competitive play-in team until probably the Conley trade. And they basically had a realization, like, we'll still compete for a play-in spot, but we'll focus more on our younger players here. I would say it's probably, I don't want to call it tanking, but they basically looked at, it's a little different than what I guess Dallas blatantly did, but they pulled back the reins and said, hey, this roster as is probably the best as a 10 seed. Let's take a step back. Let's get another lottery pick, and we'll move on from here. The positive thing is, for about 70 games, not 70 games, I'm going to say the whole 82 games, you built positive habits with your players, whether it be Markkanen, who had an all-star year, whether it be Taylor Horton-Tucker at the end playing point guard, whether it be a veteran like Jordan Clarkson, Walker Kessler, Ochai Agbaji. Like, you built winning habits with your young players, and that is hard to do when you're playing out the string and winning 17, 18 games here. You put them in positions to playing meaningful games at home and on the road, to be in this thing, and then you kind of just pulled back the reins a little bit, and certainly injuries played a big role in there. But when you look at from a draft perspective this year, they've got 3 first-round picks. They've got their own, which is right now the 9th pick in the draft, certainly can move up. What is that percentage for Utah? Let me see here. 4.5%. Hey, I was in New Jersey when we drafted, I think we were either 8 or 9, and we moved up to 1 and drafted Kenyon Martin that year. So it happens. We know it happens. Could you imagine that, though? Goodness. Victor in Utah with him and Markkanen and Kessler. Woo, talk about some length. Let's move on. You've got that Minnesota pick. We're doing this video before the Timberwolves play in the play-in. If Minnesota loses, I mean, you're looking at probably the 14th pick in the draft, 13th, 14th pick in the draft based on what happens in the other play-in games. So you could have 2 lottery picks, and then you have a late first round pick, the 28th pick from Philadelphia. It's hard for me to think that Utah walks away on end of June with 3 first-round picks. I think I wrote about it here. They're really limited as far as their second-round picks. You move that late first and kind of maybe build up your second-round assets, or maybe you pick up another first here. But they're, as I said, well-positioned going into the draft. They will do their due diligence. Kessler and Abaji were not their own. They were part of that Minnesota trade. Kessler is a stud. This is not a Timberwolves video, but I think if you had a do-over, and we knew what happened based off this year, I think you'd probably want a do-over. But you've got Kessler. I think Markkanen's had a terrific year. I'm going to go into him in a little bit here, but you basically have, as I said, you went from a luxury tax team, limited draft assets, and a first-round ceiling to one that has equity, draft equity, financial and roster flexibility, and a foundation of young players. That's what you want when you're starting this retool of the roster here. And when you look at their finances, as I said, they've got $30 million in cap space. That includes the player options of Horton Tucker, Jordan Clarkson, Rudy Gay, Damian Jones, and the partially guaranteed contract of Kelly Olynyk. Olynyk's contract, let me pull this down here. 12.2 next year. $3 million is guaranteed. June 28th is the trigger date. I would expect Clarkson to opt out. They can still work out an extension, but I think he's a priority. I know this is kind of an in-between team, but I think he's still a priority to bring back based on what he did as a starter this year. I think the big question is, what is your walk-away number? Remember, 7 or 8 teams with cap space. A lot of them are rebuilding. I think $19 million for Jordan Clarkson, somewhere in there. Horton Tucker is interesting, just based on him starting at point guard. And we're going to go into the team needs section in a little bit here. I would expect Rudy Gay to opt in to that deal. So you're looking at $30 million in cap space. I think the last time Utah had cap space was when they signed Bojan. Different stage, I would say, because you had Donovan there and Rudy already. I can see this team, hey, they can go out and do free agent shopping, but I think where their roster is similar to kind of where San Antonio is, Oklahoma City, kind of just take a wait and see approach and see what makes sense, and maybe take back guys in trades. Top front office priority. It's minor, but I think a nice gesture is guaranteeing the Markkanen 2024-25 contract, right? It's only guaranteed for $18 million. Only $6 is guaranteed. Just guarantee the whole thing, right? I think that's your priority. And then you got to figure out what you want to do with Clarkson. That's the big thing as far as for me, for you all. Besides, of course, the draft, figuring out how Jordan Clarkson fits in and what's a compromise on a new number. Markkanen is extension eligible. I would think that there's no deal here. He can add another 3 years to his contract, just because the extension rules in this new CBA went from 120% increase to 140% increase. So for Markkanen, it's a 3-year, $82 million extension. It's basically a $15 million improvement from the prior CBA here, and I would want to just kind of play out the year. He's not all Supermax eligible anytime in this lifetime, even if he earns all NBA, because he was traded. Remember that? He wasn't in his rookie contract, so you rule out the Supermax. And this is where the extension rules drive me crazy. Why not reward Markkanen where he can extend for 30% of the cap when he would become a free agent? However, he will likely play out this contract unless he wants to take it and then become a free agent in the when is that, 2025 offseason, I believe. 24-25 is that partial guarantee. So you're staring at him becoming a free agent in 2025 because the extension rules do not help him. Unless he wants to take a 3-year, $82 million deal. And that's totally on him. I think the team needs portion of it depends on are you comfortable with the Horton Tucker, Chris Dunn combination as your backups. As your point guards here, kind of a rotating there, or is there somebody out there that maybe you get somebody? Hey, maybe you get the second pick in the draft and Scoot Henderson is your point guard of the future, or maybe there's a draft pick out there that is your point guard of the future, and you have Horton Tucker, Dunn, and then that player, and then you can continue to develop him. Point guard wise, free agency. You're looking at Fred VanVleet, Kyrie Irving. I don't think James Harden makes any sense. I don't think any of those 3 guys really make much sense at all here. That's what I'm talking about, cap space. Horton Tucker's eligible to sign 4 for $61 before June 30th. As they said, he's got that player option. And then man, they are loaded. I mean, the draft picks are loaded. 3 unprotected ones from Minnesota, certainly this year, 23, 25, 27. 3 unprotected ones from Cleveland, 25, 27, 29. Top 4 protected pick from the Lakers in 27. Top 5 protected from Minnesota in 29. Swap rights with Minnesota or Cleveland in 26, and a swap rights with Cleveland in 28. That is a full arsenal of draft picks for the Utah Jazz. So, as I said before, they are the blueprint on how not to completely tear it down, but basically kind of keep the foundation of the house, the roof of the house, the walls of the house, and then now add everything in between here. And they are on their way here. But of course, it starts with the draft with 3 first-round picks.
Thanks for watching ESPN on YouTube. For live streaming sports and premium content, subscribe to ESPN+.